All right, welcome into another episode of Hockey Royalty Live, the official podcast of hockeyroyalty.com. Tonight we got a doozy of an episode for you because we'll always have Los Angeles, episode 190 for your boys here at Hockey Royalty. We're going to be talking about the offensive uptick in February, the Four Nations tournament about to kick off, and then where do the Kings sit coming after the break? Are there some trades in mind? What kind of players are we kind of targeting? Does it make sense to trade away our first-round pick? All those questions will be talked about on tonight's episode. So get in the chat, hit that like button. You know what to do. Let's go. As always, that video is brought to you by Ezera, their new album Blind, out now. Anywhere you listen to music, so go pop some headphones in and listen to their album. It's pretty good stuff. As you can tell by the intro, boys, I'm getting excited. Four Nations is coming up, some quality hockey. Kings are playing some quality hockey. It's just a good time to be watching some sports. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Yeah, right with you. My excitement levels for the Four Nations were a little bit tempered, I felt like, the last few weeks. And probably for a lot of others, especially hockey fans and NHL fans. You get so ingrained and over what your favorite team's been doing. I think everybody kind of overlooks an upcoming kind of exhibition style tournament. But now that it's like we've seen the lineups, we've seen who's playing with who, I'm getting a little bit more excited. And I think maybe a little bit has to do with the players that the Kings are sending. And we'll talk about them later on. But how you doing, Joe?
I'm all right. We had team dinner tonight. For that, I'm telling you right now, I'm full, beyond full.
What'd you eat?
I have an eating problem. I think sometimes I can't stop myself. I had multiple healthy servings of pasta, meatballs, lots of bread. That little like sundae, hot fudge with some ice cream, cookies. Oh, it's bad news,
Indulged.
man. I can't help myself. I get home and my wife's like, "Why do you always do that?" I have no idea. Can't help it.
You're burning bucos calories on the ice. You know, coaching a team that's
I don't know about coach.
You're coaching a team that's 18-1. You're burning a lot of calories.
True. So. Yeah. There you go. Thank you. And you know what? I'll do a little extra pacing on the bench tomorrow for the game. How's that?
There you go.
You ever put the gear on like Rob Blake PLD kind of style and really teach the kids something? Or
but we used to. We haven't done it in a while. We'll always do a 3-on-3 tournament, and if depending on how the teams kind of shake out, like sometimes we used to put a team of like just the coaches in, and we wouldn't put our gear on, but we would always play. But we haven't done that lately, so no, I haven't put the gear on in a while for that. How you doing, Brandon?
Good. Yeah, just had some people over for the Super Bowl. We just played some board games, kind of chatted and ordered some pizza, so pretty tame there. And I don't know. I think I'm really buzzed for this Four Nations tournament. Just USA pride. You got the proper hat on there, Russ. There, and it's what got me into hockey. I watched the Olympics. Team USA versus Team Canada was the inaugural event into my hockey fandom, and it really kind of just upticked me into loving the sport. And so it's kind of getting flashbacks from that, and really excited to see, even though just get a little taste of what's to come. And then, kind of a palate cleanser of the Kings, and then really to dive in on our team when we come back. But the fans are rabid as well here in the chat to get started. Shake Master always in here. Let's talk some LA Kings hockey. Gwen with a what's up, party people. People saying hi to Gwen. And then Anthony saying, hey, Brandon, your tinfoil hat is your best hat. Well, I'll be donning that in the third period because we're about to talk some trades later on. But we got to get into how the Kings have been playing. Miserable January and uptick February. I don't know. It's the month of love, and we're loving some Kings hockey. Russ, what have you seen from this team in general that has going on? Is it a return just to the mean, or are we kind of seeing something different in February as a whole?
I think it's probably the former there. The Kings kind of getting back to what they are as a hockey team. I mean, to be honest with you, like the whole downturn that they had in January, I was never really overly concerned. I mean, yeah, you don't want it to continue, but when you kind of look and take a step back at the schedule that this team has been enduring, I mean, after the whole fire situation where that game against Calgary gets postponed, then you have the 5-game road trip that starts in Winnipeg. You go up to Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, Seattle. You come home for those 2 games. Then you're on another 5-game road trip. I mean, some of the people I've talked to around the organization, I mean, just everybody involved from just everybody top down, they were just like tired as all hell after those 2 road trips. And you can really tell it kind of got to some of those players. So I wasn't really overly concerned with a lot of the lack of offense, I guess. Once they came back home, they had that game against Montreal. We had kind of talked like what we kind of expected from that game. I pretty much expected them. I kind of thought they'd win 5-2, and they ended up pulling out 6-3. Won a game they probably should have won pretty handily. And the game against Dallas, easily one of the more exciting games of the season. That was a fun one. Good back and forth. Kings ended up coming out with the win in the shootout, and then they have the maybe kind of disappointing shootout loss to Anaheim. But overall, I thought it was more or less just the team that's just got rested and was able to come back home, take a deep breath, have some practices, and get back to the type of hockey that they're find some success with. And that's what they were able to do the last 3 games or last 4 games or so. So, yeah, I think it's the Kings kind of getting back to their roots a little bit.
Joe, Matt Duchene came out in his post-game interview and said the Kings kind of felt like they had a different gear compared to the last couple of years. I mean, Dallas is obviously a top team, especially if they get Miro Heiskanen back. Do you put it? Is that just player speak, or do you kind of see maybe a little smaller uptick against maybe those teams like Dallas, to where last year we thought we were one of the bottom feeders, but maybe we're in the middle ground and have a better chance of poking away a 7-game series?
Well, I think at least in that game, he's not wrong. The Kings had, that was a pretty high event game in terms of expected goals, both for and against. Like that was the Kings at 5-on-5 had 3.3 expected goals for, which is much higher than they are even at home. They don't produce like or generate chances like that. This is per natural stat, but also expected goals against, where this team has been elite at all season, especially at home. Again, 3.28, so 3.3. So this was a back in, a lot of chances in this game, as Russ alluded to, one of the more exciting kind of games of the season. So at least in that game, Duchene is right. I mean, I think, when you look at these last few games since they've been home, they are creating much more than they have, certainly on the road trip, but also on the season as a whole. I mean, on the season, we've talked about this all season long. This is not a team that generates a lot of chances. I think they're 2.5 or so, give or take, in terms of expected goals for per 60 at 5-on-5. But in these last few games, they've been over 3. So they are generating a heck of a lot more. How much of that, is it, you look at the Ducks and Montreal playing into that. Either way, they're also finishing, though, right? We've seen situations where the Kings, even when they do get chances, this has not been a high finish team, but they scored a bunch against Dallas. They scored a bunch against, Montreal, and, what happens against Anaheim happens sometimes. I guess I will agree with Russ on, January didn't change a whole lot for me in the sense that I've kind of had this thought all season where this just depends on the matchup when it comes to playoffs. And these last 3 games have done nothing to sway that for me. I still think it's as a team that, is as we sit today. I mean, we've still got time before the deadline. We've still got, a month's worth of hockey. Things can happen. We'll see if anything changes, whatever. But I still feel like it's really depends on who they play. And I think they're still a tier kind of below that top team. So, all in all, like, I agree with what Russ said. Is like, the skid in January didn't worry me in the sense that, I don't think a whole lot changed. And these last few games here, same thing. Like, I don't think it doesn't move the needle a whole lot for me in terms of like, okay, maybe now this team is like ready to take on an Edmonton or something like that. Like, I'm nothing like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think to me, it kind of shows if we just get a decent shooting percentage, this team with their 5-on-5 dominance can rack up a fair amount of goals. We saw that in the beginning of the season, but with the way that we play and shooting a lot from the perimeter, if we're not getting to the dirty areas, or if those shots are not getting traffic or anything like that, we could also be a 0-1 goal team. So we have that polar opposite. I think what I really enjoyed is the pairing between Byfield and Fiala, which they seem to go away from a little bit, but that seemed to generate quite a bit of offense. They were having a good time. I mean, Fiala is leading the team in points in February, and I believe he has 14 in his last 13 games, something like that. So obviously playing out of his mind ever since he shaved that mustache. I thought the mustache was giving him power, but he gave that power to Danault when Danault shaved into the mustache. So it was just a transfer of power, not a loss of power. But Byfield seemed to have that uptick. He's having one of his best starts to a month. And so I think there's something there with that pairing. You know, Joe and I talked about before we even got on. Maybe that's where the addition comes in on that line and finding somebody to go there. So I think that pairing has been kind of fun. Russ, have you seen them kind of unlock a little bit to each other's game now that they've been playing with each other?
Well, I'm going to pass this over to Joe, because Joe, you've been the one for a while now talking about getting Fiala away from Danault and putting him with somebody like a Byfield. And like Brandon just alluded to, it's been paying a ton of dividends over the last few games.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you know, Occam's razor. Sometimes the easiest explanation is just put your best offensive players together, and you know, hey, sometimes things will happen. And for all of the good that Philippe Danault does, particularly at 5-on-5, which there is, like, and I know Danault catches a lot of heat for the production not being there. You know, it's his coach that plays him, you know, as many minutes as he plays him. You know, it's not his fault. Like, he, at this stage of his career, you know, he's just not going to be a big point producer. I know coming over from Montreal, that was the knock on him, but I still thought that there was, because of how good of a play driver he was, that there could be more production. We did start to see that, but this year he's been a really good defensive center, but there just isn't a whole lot there in terms of chance creation. Meanwhile, Quentin Byfield, you know, he has showed his spurts. Even when he wasn't finishing, there were chances being created. And it's like, Kevin Fiala, you've got to give him somebody to play with that is an offensive talent and is somebody that's capable of creating offense. And that's certainly something, you know, that Byfield can do at a greater level than Philippe Danault can. And you just look at, with the two together this season, they've got over 62% expected goal share, 60% scoring chances, 62% high danger chances, and that's just significantly higher than either of those two away from each other. So it's been just exactly what the Kings have needed in terms of finding that like secondary possible production, because obviously the first line with like Kopitar, with Kempe, that's, you know, they've had a couple of different wingers, but in general, that line's doing their job. And they're getting, if you start to get that second wave of production coming, which to me, it just made the most sense, put Byfield, at least try it. You know, even if it doesn't work, just give it a shot, because you're seeing the Fiala and Danault thing just is not working. But now if you know, we always hear a lot of coaches talk about pairs. You got your Kempe Kopitar. Maybe you got something here with QB and Fiala, and then you're just figuring out the wings with the rest of them. And I think Danault and Fogle will fit perfectly fine together. I don't think there's any issues there. So no, I think it was long overdue just to see if it could help jumpstart some offense. And early on, not bad.
I remember at the beginning of the year, we were talking about, like, it's going to come to a point. I mean, we see it with the Oilers, right? Every time we play them, whenever they're desperate for something that needs to happen, they put McDavid on the top line with Draisaitl and Hyman. You just throw Bouchard and Ekholm in the back, and then something eventually goes in. Yeah. And I remember we talked at the beginning, we were like, eventually the Kings will have to get to a point where you just put your three best players, or at least skilled players, on the ice at any given instance. And we considered that to be Byfield, Fiala, Kempe at the time. And yeah, like, you're totally right. And yeah, we all see it. Byfield and Fiala, it just clicks. I mean, the offensive instincts are just constantly there. I've seen Byfield with the puck up the ice, like through the neutral zone, like way more in the last 4 games than I have probably all year. It's insane. Like you just go and look at the highlights. Just Byfield carrying the puck up the ice. You have Fiala on the left. You have or Leferrier on the right. It's every play, and it's working. And I think Hiller alluded to like the success, and I'll include Leferrier in this because he's been a big reason for their success too. He kind of alluded to the fact that now you have a lefty and a righty on both sides, and they're kind of clicking in terms of the shooting opportunities. And then we've seen that with Fiala getting a couple one-timer goals. He had 2 back-to-back in the game against Dallas, which was really fun to watch. So, yeah, that's been a big sense. I also heard that Fiala was sick on the road trip, so maybe that's why he was struggling a little bit. Hiller brought that up in a post-game interview or availability, so maybe that hurt him. But, yeah, like ever since –
he was having mustache withdrawals.
Yeah, exactly. But, yeah, ever since they've been back home and those 3 have been together, it's been – a really fun, it's been just like a fun line to watch. And like, I kind of like Randy, you brought it up a little bit in the last game in Anaheim. For whatever reason, Hiller decided to mix things up on the top line, and he went with the 11-7 and ended up rotating players at the top line. And it ended up being a rotation of players like Byfield and Fiala. And then you ended up getting lesser minutes from that line, which I absolutely hated because you've been struggling on this road trip, and that was a big storyline coming back home, and you finally get things going, and then all of a sudden you're tinkering again with the one line that's kind of carrying you, and you were struggling to score. And until you ended up putting Adrian Kempe on the defensive end, and he streaks down the middle for a backhand goal. So I hope that doesn't happen going forward. Maybe that was Hiller sending a message. I said on Twitter, maybe as a subtle message to his GM, like, hey, I kind of need somebody to play in this spot, or else I'm going to start tinkering with other places here and there. But, I mean, those 3, it's just been so fun to watch Byfield, Fiala, and Leferrier kind of carry this offense the last couple of games.
I just want to add, too, and I know people hate hearing me talk about this, but, you know, when I look at the other – I have always talked about, I think I'm a big believer in offense starting from the back end. And if you just look at, for example, Quentin Byfield, you know, his most common line mate this year has been Warren Fogle, but his next 3 most common teammates, Gavrikov, Anderson, and Edmondson. Not exactly known for offensive creativity, not exactly known for their puck movement. They have different things that you know they're known for, they're good at, or whatever. So when you look at Byfield, his most common line mates are Fogle and then 3 defensive defensemen. And then if you go and you flip it over and you look at Kevin Fiala, obviously his most common center is Philippe Deneau. But again, this most common defenseman, Joel Edmondson and Vladislav Gavrikov. Now Brant Clark is 3rd, but then Mike Anderson's 4th. So I continue to come back to everybody talks about the Kings need a top 6 forward. The Kings need a top 6 forward. Yes, they do. But does it matter if that top 6 forward is on the ice with Joel Edmondson or is on the ice with, you know, Vladislav Gavrikov and Mikey Anderson, who are just not going to – it's just not their game, right? So I continue to say, like, today's game, you got to have defensemen that are mobile to a point – but can transport the puck. And I think that remains an issue for the Kings. And I don't think it's too far of a leap to say, you know, we got think pieces about, you know, Kevin Fiala, is he any good? Well, he is good, but, you know, go look at, you mentioned McDavid and Draisaitl and understand that those guys are on different levels. But when you've got guys like Ekholm and Bouchard transporting the puck to them, life's a little bit easier for those guys too from the back end than it is for Kevin Fiala when he's got, you know, Joel Edmondson and Gavrikov, or, you know, a most common defenseman. I think that matters, guys. Like, I think there's so much that we put into, you know, their line mates, which of course, you know, makes a lot of sense because that's who they're playing with the most, but who's getting them the puck? When they get into the offensive zone or through the neutral zone, what are they doing with that puck when they get in there? Do they have defensemen that are jumping up into the play? Do they have defensemen capable of making certain passes into the slot and things like that? It's where the Kings continue to lack. And I think, when you go add a top 6 forward, that's fine. Don't be shocked, though, if that doesn't just solve the problem and all of a sudden the pucks go in, because stylistically, it doesn't change anything really. And it still had, to me, there's still an issue on the back, and hopefully Drew Doughty will help this. In a way, guys, it's kind of a good thing, I think. Quick sidetrack, as we want Drew Doughty to get kind of ramped up here. It's kind of nice that he can play for Canada for at least a few games here, so he can use some of his ramp up time, not with the Kings, so he can dust the, you know what I mean? I think that's a good thing.
No more drop passes in front of you.
So, but again, shocker, Joe's talking about the defense again, but I don't think that's crazy, right? If you look at most common line mates for their offensive players, and it's Edmondson, Gavrikov, and Mike Anderson.
Well, you're kind of teasing a secret question that I had for you guys later in the tinfoil hat segment, so for a lookout for that.
Right.
I think it's interesting because we talked about in the beginning of the season, this team's only going to go so far as Quinton Byfield carries them. Quinton Byfield's finally getting started. His IPP for the month of February is 100%. So that means IPP is his individual production when a goal is scored. So when his line scores, or a goal is scored with him on the ice, he was involved in 100% of those plays. So definitely facilitating this month and being a part of the action when his team's on the ice. And as Joe's mentioned, of course, 60+%. He's doing a great job. Even though he hasn't put a goal in the month of February, he's doing a great job as far as facilitating the offense through him, driving play. And that's what that team needs. This team needs a legit 2C in order to compete in the playoffs. And Jeannot's not that guy. Jeannot is a really good 3C, and you need Byfield to take that second step. And Fiala needs somebody that he can play with. I think Fiala is probably the most gifted offensive player, him and Kempe. And he needs somebody to be able to play with him at that level. And will Quinton Byfield rise to that occasion? So
yeah, it's always well, I was gonna say it's always a question of Fiala. They can't find teammates to play with Fiala, and I wonder if it's you see it. It's I wonder if it's almost the opposite. It's no one else can keep up with Fiala. It seems like. I mean, obviously we love Kopitar and Kempe, and they have a great chemistry together. But maybe it's just a different play style. But Fiala, it's just so the passes these three make, both Ferrier and Byfield and Fiala. They're so quick and just small little 2-foot passes that probably mean nothing, but it just changes the whole dynamic of the way the defense is defending them. There's been at least multiple occasions that I see LaFerriere or Fiala or somebody just kind of in the neutral zone, and they'll skate 5 feet or whatever, and they'll just drop the puck back because they know Byfield's just screaming up the middle. And sure enough, that starts in a rush opportunity. I don't know if we have the numbers, Joe. Maybe you do, but I would love to know what the rush opportunities are for the last few games, 5-6 games or so, because it seems like the chances have been way higher that we've seen, at least on the rush, compared to the earlier parts of the season where everything was kind of built on kind of hard cycling opportunities in the offensive zone. Where now, just kind of looking back at the Dallas game, even in the Montreal game, you see chances being made as soon as they're entering the zone.
Yeah, and I think that there's the potential with that trio, and at least it's nice to see, because I would
Byfield and Fiala have 2 shots off of rush attempts in the last 4 games each.
Yeah, and I would bet that that's compared to where it was before.
2 more than it was before.
Yeah, and I don't know what if LaFerriere is a fit right now. That's fine, because I think that, to your point, Russ, we've talked. You always hear about guys finding guys that can play with certain players, whether it's Sidney Crosby or whoever it might be, just because of A, it's a stylistic thing, but also B, to your point, these guys are thinking at a different level, and Kevin Fiala is, from a creativity standpoint, as high as it gets on the Kings. So you want to be able to have somebody that can give Fiala his freedom to do that and think at his level, to where okay, he's going to work right now. Let me get myself into space. So I'm an option for him as he's looking to do that, where depending on who else you're playing with him, they may not think that way. They might be thinking, well, I'm just going north-south here. I'm getting to the net, or I have to focus on making sure my defensive responsibility, something along those lines where you want somebody to have that ability to kind of think along with him. And Byfield is, at least right now, is so far so good in showing the ability to do that. And I always thought, like, I don't know. I thought, I don't know where you guys are at. I thought the Fiala with Kopitar and Kempe was never that bad. Like, I don't know if it ever, like, it was never given long looks, I don't think, long enough looks to really say, but I always thought they were kind of dangerous. Maybe it wasn't the same Kopitar, like, dominant in the defensive side of things from a metric standpoint, but I thought that line was pretty creative.
Boy, we only see it, like, for one game and then the next half of the game. It's like, there's something there that I don't know. Like, yeah, because I agree with you. Like, Hilliard's totally fine going toward that at the end of game when he needs when he needs offense, but for some reason that's just not a line they want to continuously play together. It's strange.
I'll say, I guess we'll talk about it later, but I was making my point about the defenseman. It's like, and people, they need a forward. And the one spot where it may not matter 5-on-5, if they get a quote unquote top 6 score, I do think it can make a difference on the power play.
Obviously I love Laugh, but if you can get a better right shot on the first unit, I'm sure that'll help.
And Kempe can move over to the left side. He hasn't. I mean, I know he likes playing his off, but I think that's mainly for a rush thing. I think once you get in the zone and you're cycling, it really doesn't matter at that point. But it'll be interesting to see how this team continues to play after the break, and if the team decides to continue putting Byfield with Fiala, because I think it's working. So, yeah. All right, we're going to get into our next asset here, which is going to be Coast to Coast. We're going to be talking about the Four Nations tournament. Exactly, we have 2 players playing in it. Where are they playing? What are we looking for in the next tournament here, and just kind of our overall excitement. So, I'll start it off. I think we have 2 players playing, obviously Doughty and Kempe. Doughty for Team Canada, Kempe for Sweden. Let's start with Doughty. Doughty's been rumored to be paired with Shea Theodore in their first practice. What do you guys think about that pairing for Team Canada?
Love it. I mean, I feel like Doughty has probably never really played with an offensive defenseman, kind of like of Theodore's caliber. So I'm actually really excited to see how that turns out. And you also have the interesting wrinkle on all this that I believe Theodore's a UFA after this year. So that's a added that gives me a little bit added interest in that defensive pairing.
I'm right with Russ. I absolutely love that. I think it's a perfect pair. I'm excited to see it. I love it, and I mean it's obviously tough break for Canada losing Pietrangelo, but when you've got Doughty, who I know Doughty's not at his Drew Doughty level right now, but if there's anything that can get him to get there a little bit quicker, it's playing for Team Canada, because he obviously loves that. So I'm really excited about that pairing for Canada. And while we're on Canada, Randon, I mean, did you guys see, like, I mean, this isn't a surprise, but those power plays they're trotting out there is,
oh my God,
pretty good.
Dude, that first unit, like,
come on.
I'll just read it off. It's Crosby, McKinnon, McCarr, McDavid, and Reinhart. Like, Reinhart, I think, leads the NHL, has led the NHL in power play goals.
One of the smartest hockey players in the league, Sam.
I think he's like perfect for them too, because he's like a Zach Hyman that'll just go to the net and just be like a guy you can pinball a puck off of. But I feel like he's even better. So to have that with the skilled playmaking of McDavid, McKinnon, McCarr, I mean Crosby, like,
yeah,
dude, good luck.
So we talk about handedness so often, right? And just getting that right kind of combination. And it suits Canada. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going to suit Canada perfectly, but it suits Canada perfectly because you've got Crosby is playing the down low guy. So he'll be kind of net front / behind the goal line. Reinhart, and Crosby's a lefty. Reinhart is your righty. who is going to be in the bumper, and he's as smart as they come. So that's going to work perfect. I didn't see whether they had McDavid on the left flank or the right flank versus McCarr McKinnon, because I do think McKinnon likes to play downhill quite a bit. But either way, just having that lefty righty combo that they can feed off of each other is going to be really, really nice. So that's really dangerous. And to think that they've got two defensemen on the second unit, which we figure all those forwards that they would have 4 forwards on the second unit too, but they've got Theodore and Morrissey right now on the second unit. I don't hate that either. So it's pretty impressive what they're throwing out there as usual.
A little sidetrack. Just how good is McKinnon?
Dude, yeah.
Rantanen, ever since he's been traded, it has looked like nothing. And then they get Marty Necas, and he's like, "Oh yeah, well, I'll just make him a 100-point player, and I'll just go from there."
Yeah, I think I was talking with Andrew Knoll about this, and shout out to my buddy Andrew Knoll. I sat at the games with him. He's a big Eagles fan, so he sent me a bunch of happy messages last night. So congrats to him and his Eagles. So he's living the high life. But yeah, I was talking with him about that trade, and McKinnon, the way McKinnon's been able to elevate Necas' game, I feel like he really just elevates the ceiling of any player he plays with. And with Necas, that just really couldn't happen in Carolina, just because obviously you're not playing with the type of caliber that McKinnon is. And that way, I wonder if Necas was almost not being utilized enough. I don't know. I don't know too much about that.
No. He wasn't. You're right.
Okay.
You're right.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it because you watch them play and it's like, okay, where's 88? And now you see him with McKinnon, and it's just like, yeah, Rantanen, it's like it looks like they haven't missed a beat. And my buddy's an Avs fan. He was like all salty and sad that they traded McKinnon, and now he's like, "Who's McKinnon or who's Rantanen?" I got this Necas guy. He's almost better. So
for half the price.
It's worked out for the Avs, man. He looks incredible.
That was a thing with Necas for the leading up to this kind of contract negotiation. I don't call it dispute this offseason. He was never given the minutes that he probably should have been given. And I think that's why there was teams that maybe were a little hesitant to trade for him, because they're like, we don't really know. Is he really that top line guy? Because Carolina hasn't really played him there. He was never on PP1, never really got that elevated role. So I think there was this uncertainty, and then he signs the bridge in Carolina, but it came with, you're going to be playing in a bigger role, and he had an incredible start to the season. So you're right, Russ, that for a while there, up until this season at least, he wasn't really being utilized the way he probably should have been. Mm-hmm. And so now seeing it in Colorado, good for him, good for them. And, he's making half the money for now, but the rate he's going, he'll be making whatever Rent was going to make anyway, but good on them.
I mean, it's interesting to see those contract comparisons, because obviously Rantanen's a UFA.
Yeah.
But then 2 years you have Necas a UFA.
Yeah.
Curious how those will look.
Well, getting to the next team, Juicy Boys playing for the Tri-Corona. I saw 2 different line combinations, so I don't know which one is the real one there. But I saw him with Elias Pettersson and Forsberg, and then I've also seen him with who was the other one? I'll pull it up here. But the first one was Elias Pettersson Joel Eriksson Ek and Raquel was the other line that I saw him play with. Okay. So I'm not 100% sure if you guys have seen either of those line combinations.
The one I saw was Kempe, Pettersson, and Forsberg.
Yeah, me too.
I think a majority of people shared that one, so I'll just kind of go off that one. Mm-hmm. But as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, yes. The world is going to learn how good Adrian Kempe is at playing hockey. When you have him paired with Elias Pettersson, who, I would knock him in a little bit. He's still an incredibly skilled hockey player, and I just say he just doesn't have that dog in him, but I think he's still got all the skill in the world to be able to play with these type of players. So there's that, and you have that pivot down the middle. And then you have Phil Forsberg, who's one of the premier snipers, just kind of like Adrian Kempe, who maybe gets overlooked even too, playing in Nashville, playing on the other side. I mean, I was already pretty high on Sweden coming into this, and now I'm seeing some of these combinations. I think they might have a chance to take this thing. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, they're one of my favorites.
And they have the best blue line. Of
Hands down, in my opinion. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I mean, that might be my favorite line in this whole tournament, Russ. Kempe, Patterson, and Forsberg. I'm really excited to see that. Yeah, I like what Sweden's putting together out there. That'll be a good one. I mean, so much hinges too on like what Zibanejad are they getting? If they're getting useless Zibanejad, that's going to be a problem. But if Zibanejad's going to be capable, you know, when you got him with Nylander and it looks like Rickard Rakell is on that top line right now, you know, and Randon, you mentioned the decor with Hedman, Brodin, Ekholm, Carlson, Dahlin, Asmus, and Anderson. And I didn't even mention Gustav Forsling. He was sick today. This is per Elliot Friedman. So they're loaded on the blue line. Yeah, love what they're doing. That's going to be fun.
Who's starting for them in net?
I don't know. Is it Gustafsson?
That would make sense. Yeah,
because I think Allmark's been dealing with some stuff too. So it might be Gustafsson in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's the big loss. I think Markstrom's a better pick there.
Yep, agreed.
Gustafsson's no slouch, but like you mentioned, like that you rattled off that defense, man. Like it's incredible. And to be honest with you, like I wouldn't be surprised if you just slot Forsling in for Bodine. To be honest with you, with Hedman, that's probably what I would do.
Yep, me too.
Nothing against Brodin, who's an incredible player, but I think Forsling even's that much better. And then you're able to pair him with Victor Hedman, who I believe is one of the best defensemen in the NHL.
Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck. Yeah. Wednesday's going to be fun.
Yeah.
So there's been a few injuries. I think the biggest one probably for any team is Miro Heiskanen for Team Finland. Already pretty thin on defense. Yeah. Lose their number one defenseman there. Team USA, though, I've seen Quinn Hughes is playing. I've seen Quinn Hughes is not playing. I don't know if he was at practice today for Team USA. It would make sense for him to sit out the tournament, considering that Vancouver is probably more important for him, and he's been injured as of late. Have you guys seen anything about his status for Team USA?
I don't think he's playing, to be honest with you. I think he's pretty much come to that decision that he'll probably have to forego. I haven't seen anything in terms of him maybe joining later on, but at this point, if you're probably not there for the first practice, I mean, these teams got like 2 practices and they play a game. So it's like you got to be there kind of probably getting ready to go. I mean, it's a big loss. Quinn Hughes, obviously, perennial Norris Trophy winner probably this year. Maybe him and Rowensky are up there with his USA teammates. So, but yeah, like that's a big loss, but you still have some good American blue liners to help out. I still like that lineup.
Yeah, I mean the Hughes that's a big one, and I think I haven't seen anything to suggest that he is. I think his agent was even talking about how he made the decision to play or not play, I should say. And Jack Hughes today talked about it too. So
I just saw a screenshot from TSN, and they brought Jake Sanderson in his position.
Yeah. So I mean, listen, I do still like the decor. Don't get me wrong, but I mean that's a big loss for the United States.
Right now their pairings are Adam Fox and Jacob Slavin, McAvoy and Werenski, Faber and Hannafin with Sanderson as the 7.
I mean, just think like you had Quinn Hughes. Now I don't know how Sanderson how this slots in, but Quinn Hughes sure as hell wasn't their 7. So. No. And I love Jake Sanderson. I think he's a really good player, but that's a really big loss. But that said, there's certainly plenty of things to get excited about because I do think that decor is good.
They definitely have the best goalie tandem.
Yeah, the goaltending is great. Eichel, Connor, Matthew Tkachuk, Matthews, Hughes, Gensel could be a ton of fun. That third line of Miller, Brady, Tkachuk, and Boldy is going to cause problems for a lot of teams. Yeah.
Oh my God, they're going to be in your face the entire game. It's crazy.
I gotta say, I mean, I wonder if this will matter, and maybe it won't. But I just find it hard to believe that they looking at that the grouping on the fourth line with. And I like Brock Nelson but Trocheck and Dylan Larkin should be there, but like Kreider, I find it hard to believe that a Tage Thompson couldn't make this roster, or even a Cole Caulfield couldn't make this roster for some depth scoring because, I wonder, maybe that's nitpicky, but you do wonder if some of that depth on that bottom line is going to come in to be, an issue. But we'll see.
I don't think any other team in the league has as much feistiness as we do. I mean, you got both Kachucks by itself.
I would have loved Thompson over Kreider, at least. Nothing to take away from Kreider. And
a huge 4C that can shoot. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I take it away from Kreider. That's fine, Russ. He's later in his career. I mean, he's had a hell of a career.
He's been struggling all year too.
Yeah,
Ranger fans been on him, and that's why I wonder, how much are some of these picks are hey, you haven't got the opportunity. Let's give you the chance here in this game, in this tournament that doesn't really mean too much.
Sure.
I think the thing of it too, someone brought up this point, how much are teams or countries going to use this as almost an audition for next year, because you have the legitimate Olympics coming up, just 12 months from now.
See, do you buy that though? Because let look at it this way, a couple different things. One, you've talked about Russ, wasn't in the World Championships, the Kempe, Raymond, and Eriksson Ekline was just incredible. They aren't playing together to start the tournament. And what happens if there's a guy that's involved in this tournament, or maybe on the other side of the coin, not involved in this tournament, because that starts next year on complete fire. And meanwhile, somebody else just is just having a take a team if Zibanejad wasn't Swedish, does he make Team Canada in the role that he's a 1C right now for Sweden? If he was playing the way he's playing for the Rangers, he's not going to make the roster on some of the other teams. So I just think that if you have guys that are playing at certain levels between the end of the season, playoffs, and then you look on into next season, I think that's going to weigh more. Recent play is going to weigh more than this 4-game tournament. At least I would think it would.
Could be, but there's gonna be a lot of microscopes on these games. And if we know how Canada, Drew Doughty's been saying all the right things, and I think he had the interview today with TSN, I believe, and he talks about how much the Canadians are going in there to win this thing, because they know Canada can't be disrespected when it comes to hockey. They already lost in the World Juniors. That carries weight. In these international games, Canada's expected to be up there. Yep. So if they aren't, those Canadians, they won't forget if some player or whoever has a bad tournament. It's oh, well, what happened last year? Come on, you can't bring the same guy back. But even you look at one thing, I'll agree with you. You look at some of these rosters, it's okay, who's really going to take a spot from Crosby if he has a bad tournament, or whoever. There's really the margins in terms of but the players that are barely making it aren't really that big.
But I could see a Macklin Celebrini in his second year taking a huge step in taking a spot away from Crosby.
I was just going to say, maybe not
or
Crosby.
Byfield even.
I was just going to say, we don't even have Bedard and Celebrini on these rosters. That's just, obviously from a Canadian standpoint, but there's going to be an influx of more young talent too. And again, you look at the snubs for the U.S. with Tage Thompson and
Jason. Isn't Jason Robertson American?
Jason Robertson is American.
Yeah.
Having a slower start to the season. Case in point, Russ, if this tournament was held last year, Jason Robertson's a first liner.
Yeah.
But it's held this year, and he's have to quite a slow start for his standards, so he's not even on the roster. So I just think if Jason Robertson, has a healthier summer, and then lights the world on fire at the start of next year, he's going to be on the American team. So I think that's going to matter much more. I would think. But yeah, there's going to be some younger players that aren't around right now that are definitely going to be in it when the Olympics come around.
Plus, if this is the Olympics, don't you think Pietrangelo and Quinn Hughes are playing?
Maybe.
Yeah. Pietrangelo for sure. It sounds like he's just kind of. The dude's been playing 20 20 plus minutes
Yeah.
the last few games.
The-
It's not ailing too bad.
For like the last 10 years.
Downey probably just gave him like a cool G and was like, hey, bro, like, give me a chance here.
I think we, it's going to be interesting, and that brings me to our first sponsor here. I'm going to get into the ad read here in a second, but there's some good odds for this tournament, and starting out in the first game, Sweden, Canada over and under 5.5. Same thing with USA and Finland. So I think a lot of these over unders and these odds are pretty close together. But Sweden or Canada is favored by 1.5. So it just really shows that, and USA is favored by 1.5. So shows that there are some favorites for US and betting, and that's where, like I said, we get into our first sponsor here, which is DraftKings, which is always where we use to get to our betting nature. And DraftKings is the official sponsor of THPN. And the NHL has long been predictable as puck rolling on the edge. No one knows where it's going, but that just means there's more time for your favorite team to figure things out. And games left for you to get in the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, place your first bet. If you're at DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you just bet $5. Only at DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY, which is 467-369. In Connecticut, help available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill and Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. NHL and NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. NHL and NHL team marks are property of the NHL and its teams. Copyright NHL 2025, all rights reserved. Whoa.
Nice.
But I think the USA and Canada are probably the favorites. Mikey's coming in here. It will Russia play in the Olympics. The IHF has banned them through 2026. I don't think them or Belarus will have an Olympic team. Will they get around that like they had in the Summer Olympics by playing under the federation of something else? I don't know. We'll see how that works out. But as of right now, they're banned from the IHF through 2026, I believe. But yeah, I mean, I think there's plenty of players that, like you said, Joe, could jump up next season, and definitely take spots of Kreider or whoever, maybe these older players that are just getting the nod because it's something that they haven't been able to do in their prime, right? I mean, it's been a little bit over a decade since the last Olympics where all the top players have been played. So, you're seeing players like Kreider or whatever that maybe would have had a chance if it's been continuous, not, maybe getting that nod just to kind of as a tip of the cap, where the Olympics is going to be for keeps.
Yeah, it's a bigger deal, right? The Olympics is a bigger deal, bigger tournament, obviously. So that said, I wouldn't have minded seeing Tage Thompson at this tournament.
I get it, man. Your boy, you're just touting for your boy. You're just touting for your boy there. So it'll be fun. I'm excited to watch, and I think I'm gonna try to watch every game. My girl will probably be upset that hockey's going to be playing nonstop, multiple games per day, but it'll have to be what it is. I don't know. I just get excited about it. So
yeah.
Well, I think it's time to come up to our next segment, which is the Kings, flowing into the second half of the season. What are we kind of expecting from them? What do we feel about the trade deadline? I touted one of our first questions is, should the LA Kings be using their first round pick as draft capital? So before we get into any answers, donning the cap of tin for this segment. Let's go, boys. Let's get into the talk. So I think the first thing is one, let's get into the cap situation so that we can talk about the Kings situation accurately. Right now they have $2.831 million because some team who we will send a gift basket to in the Nashville Predators takes Andres England's cap hit off our books. And by the deadline cap space, 4.5 million is what we'll have available. So a decent amount of cap space for this team to make a move, especially if some teams need to hold on some salary. I mean, you could be looking at a $6-8 million player with some salary held, and maybe that could be a player that they could really move on. There was a statement made, I believe, by Elliot Friedman saying that teams don't really value the draft this much as this year. It's not as deep as the previous year, so some of the later teams might be more willing to throw around first-round picks. How do you guys view the first-round pick for the LA Kings, and is it something that you are okay with dealing? Is it a right situation type thing? Is it, hey, we need to bolster the prospect pool and kind of make sure the future is taken care of? How you guys are kind of viewing the season with the 2025 one?
For me, the first round pick, it's not entirely off limits. I don't really want them trading a first rounder. Actually, I don't want them trading a first rounder for a rental. So I guess for me, like, that's a definite no. Because then you get in the nitty gritty of like whether he's going to extend or not, and yeah, you just don't want that in another Andre Sekera situation. So yeah, there's a no on that. But I mean, if the right player does come around, has some term tied to him a little bit, maybe on the younger side, who knows, or can just be an important piece for this team, sure, why not? I mean, I think the only concern with this team maybe moving a first-round pick is the person who would be moving the first-round pick, who's actually making that decision, I think. So how much trust do you have in order to make the right decisions? Because in the past, it hasn't really worked out so well. So I think that's my primary concern, but I'm open to it. I'll say that.
I would echo everything Russ just said. I'm open to it. I'm not doing it for a rental, but I am very, very open to it for a player with some term on the deal, whether that term is multi-years or whether it's at least gets me to next year. I'm interested in that.
Yeah, I think you're looking at the Kings are, I think, rated by the Athletic and Scott Wheeler at 26th or 28th in the prospect pool. And not that we got a lot of elite players out of the prospect pool. We got a few. But you can't just go bare bones all the time. I think you need to have a little bit of a balance in there. And so not trading for a rental, would be nice. If they're trading for a rental and they've talked about extending that person and maybe there's an extension, like a verbal extension in place, I could see one of those moves. But I think the team is not a UFA away where throwing a first round pick to the wind means less. If it was one of the top teams, like a Colorado or something like that, they're like, hey, yeah, the first round pick is gone. Then, we're trying to win right now. That doesn't really make sense for me. So I still think that, as much as people like a lot of our prospects, like I still, like a lot of them, Lee and Greentree just got in a fight tonight and showed another aspect to his game. I think he's fourth in the OHL in points. Like as long as those guys are there, Pinelli is getting his second year as a pro. We've had a lot of guys that we've really loved that never really continuously broke to the next level, i.e., Samuel Fagimo or, Kaliev and those types of things, So I think it's something to kind of take a look at, that sometimes to take another page out of the Rams book, they threw away first round picks like candy. They didn't have a first round pick for over 8 years, and they won a Super Bowl because they brought in guys that they knew could play. Now, are we, like I said, I think trading away for the right guy that could fit, knowing that the cap is going up. So even if it's a UFA and it's a younger UFA, and you're going to extend them knowing that the cap is going up, I'd be okay with that. But just taking a shot at a rental with no plan in place, I'm with my boys that I'm against that.
Yeah, and I kind of think that's why the Kings probably aren't. I don't think, we talked about this maybe like a month or two ago. Like I don't know that they really are going to be in the market for that top 6 scoring winger because I don't know how many of those are actually available from from a rental standpoint at least. And the Kings they just don't have the assets. Brandon, you mentioned the thin prospect pool. So are they? I'd be shocked if they dealt a Liam Greentree. They've got the 3 goalie prospects to deal, and there's just not a whole lot after that that's really of trade value. And then so you have the first, which again, do you want to do that when you've got a thin prospect pool? So I kind of think it makes more sense for the Kings to kind of look at the depth, look at the fourth line, and I think there's areas they can upgrade there. In theory, that should cost less. But you just never know when there's competition for players what that trade ultimately looks like. I see, some names coming up in the chat, but like that have been brought up, and you certainly want to be trading the first for any of those guys. And I'm going to say it again because I said at the time of the trade, come trade deadline time, we're going to really wish we had that second round pick and probably not so much Tanner Jeannot. And I think everyone right now would rather have a second and a fourth as opposed to Tanner Jeannot. I don't know if you guys think that, but
other than Rob Blake.
So
okay, so let's do this. So one player whose name keeps getting brought up, Alex Tuck. Would you trade a first round pick for an Alex Tuck? He's got one more year. After everything we just said, he's got one more year left on his deal after this year. $4.75 million. He's got 19 goals, 24 assists on the year. I mean, he'd be a top 3 scorer on this Kings team in the last few years. So is that a player? I mean, he's only 28, 29 years old, I believe.
Yeah, 28. That's the type of player. Now, I don't know that he's like a high end offensive player, but he's like a really good complementary player that can comfortably play, anywhere in your top 6 and you'd be fine. Because he has that other year, I'm definitely open to it. I would ideally want maybe a little bit more term, but I'm open to it. And he and there's another name, Oliver Bjorkstrand's another one, similar, right shot, play driver, 29 years old, signed for one more year. Like to your point, Rush, those are the type of guys that, I'm a little bit more willing to deal that first round pick if it means, I got an extra year of him and then maybe we can work something out.
Kind of goes with the Kopitar timeline too, right? I mean, that's it's kind of what you're looking at.
I'm a hard yes with that. Like I think he's like those types of players. Both those players are the types of players that are fit the win now mantra that they're trying to bin with. Let's push as far as we can with Kopitar and Doughty, but he's also young enough to where maybe you sign another 4 years and then he's the veteran that, and the cap's going up. So you're not only are you losing, you're losing Ivan Provanov's $2 million off the books. You're getting after this next season, you're getting Kopitar's $7 million off, or maybe it stays at 7 or, goes to 5.5 or whatever production he's at after the end of next season. If he wants to continue playing for the Kings, and then the salary cap's going up, and then Tuck is still because he might be a second line winger or first line winger for this team, but then we can go out and sign a real big free agent or extend, with Kempe's extension at 11 million or something like that. He could still fit with his 4.75 an extension probably around 7 million. Like there's still room for a lot of flexibility, which even with just that one extra year that tacks on past this year. So
I mean 4.75 million, considering what you said about the cap going up next year, it's gonna be nothing. I mean it's 5% of the salary cap now. I mean the salary cap's going up $9-10 million next year. It's gonna be even less. That's a high value contract for a player of his production.
The only thing that I'll say to that is, and I'm skeptical that it happens with Tuck, at least now, for the reason I'm going to say is because Buffalo I genuinely don't think Buffalo is at all interested in just trading Tuck for a first round pick. Like they need a hockey trade. They need a trade that's going to bring in somebody to help them. Obviously not for this season, but like this was a big year for them to make playoffs, and it's gone horribly wrong. they're not looking. I genuinely don't believe that this is an organization that's going to blow it up and rebuild yet again. They're looking for hockey trades. They're looking for immediate help. They're looking for right shot defensemen. They're looking to shore up a couple things on their blue line. They're looking for some veterans to go.
How about this for a hockey trade there, Joe?
What's that?
Tuck, Darlene, and Tage for Byfield, Moore, Clark in a 1.
Phew, sure.
It's tinfoil hat season, everybody.
That it is. So I actually I continue to come back to if they can. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't know like what is the deal, like a first for Tuck. That's great it's fine for LA. I don't know what it does for Buffalo. Like, I guess in theory, they could then flip the first in the off season if they're looking to next season. Like, it gives them another bullet to fire. I guess. I don't know though. Like, I don't know that Tuck, how movable Tuck will end up being. I think the more likely player, if Buffalo looks to really kind of shift things around a little bit, is Dylan Cousins. He's got many more years left at $7 million. Very interested in a first round pick there. But
he's number 5 on Athletics trade board right now.
Okay. See, I think that he's a player that fits LA. Center, can play right wing, right shot. Yeah. He's having a down year though. It's not going well for him this season. He's definitely regressed. I think looking at his metrics over the bulk of his career, that he's been a much better player than he's shown this season. I'm interested in him. I think at the time that they signed the deal, I was like, this could be a steal at $7 million. This could be a steal. And it was going okay up until this year, really, where it's hit a wall. So I don't know what's going on there. I'll say this environment in Buffalo is just horrible right now. And so, I've always thought, like, is there a match, between LA and Buffalo and a Dylan Cousins and a Jordan Spence, and they'd have to find a way to make money work. But could there be something there? I don't know. I'm interested in the player, and I'm open to dealing that first. And I think stylistically he fits the LA Kings. He's a hard-working player, and he's capable. Like, he's a guy, we've talked about a right shot in the bumper. I think he can play the right shot in the bumper on the power play. Like, I think there's a player there. So I'm interested in Dylan Cousins. Not to say I'm not interested in Tuck. I just think that I just don't know how Buffalo makes that, what that deal is for Buffalo. And I can see them saying, well, we could use a defenseman in Jordan Spence. I don't know if a Trevor Moore moves the needle at all from a money standpoint, but still a capable middle six winger. I think in the right scenario, I don't know that a trade makes sense or not, but Philippe Deneau is the exact type of player Buffalo could use, to be honest with you. Again, not saying that that's the deal, that he's involved in a deal for Cousins, but Deneau is the type of player that Buffalo really could use.
Something like a reliable defensive two-way guy for all those young guys there.
Yep.
I mean, I'm with Joe. Cousins is like, if I have my own trade board, Cousins is number 1. And I don't know if a deal for Cousins gets done in the season. Maybe it's an off-season move. But if I'm considering moving my first-round pick in whatever package would be, obviously they'd be different packages for whether it be Tuck or Bjorkstrand or for Cousins. I'm throwing it at Dylan Cousins because you look at this Kings team and the way they're kind of set up right now. Once Kopitar leaves, it's like, okay, Byfield's got to be the guy. What's Turcotte going to be in the center position? You still have to know here. So it's like, are you comfortable with your 4 centers being Byfield, Deneau, Turcotte, Hellenius? Yeah, that's good. I don't think that's going to win you any Stanley Cups, to be honest with you. So I think, in my opinion, like I'm with Joe, like if you're able to package together your first round pick Jordan Spence, and maybe you entice them to take Phil Deneau. It's not really enticing him. He's still a great player. You give them Phil Deneau in that deal. I think that's a pretty good package for Dylan Cousins, who, like you said, who's having probably a down year. Maybe his value isn't as high. Still 24-year-old centerman who has a 30 goal season under his belt already, and you're able to now all of a sudden you have a future center core of Byfield, Cousins, Turcotte, and Hellenius, who are all under 25 years old. That's kind of your future right there. You could build off of that, and then you kind of work your wings with Kempe still around, Fiala still around, Greentree's coming up. Okay, now you're starting to build a little something. So if I'm putting a package together for a centerman that this team might need once Kopitar's retires, Dylan Cousins, that's the guy I'm going after. I love the player. I think they call him the workhorse from Whitehorse. They don't call him that for nothing. I mean, he's a hard-nosed, in-your-face type of player, and I feel like you said, with all the bad things that have been going on with Buffalo, it's probably taken away from his competitive spirit. And it's not just him; it's everybody on that team. It's kind of taken away from the competitive spirit from all those players. So I think maybe a change of scenery is something that would do him a lot of wonders, and maybe help the Kings out tremendously too.
I've seen a lot of in the chat. It's like, well, he's not that good of a player. I mean, the guy had 30-goal season like 2 years ago. And if you're playing in Buffalo, they're literally one of the worst teams in the league. Like you could see why he doesn't want to play or isn't mentally there, or the team isn't mentally there, or tired of the situation. I think change of scenery could do him some good. And part of a trade is, does it help you now? And are you taking a chance at the future where, Dylan Cousins and Thompson were thought of to be a top 1-2 in maybe of hockey, of a great 1-2 for the year. So, I get it. It's a risky bet. It is a risky bet. I'm not saying there's no risk to it, but you're betting on a young player transitioning to a different thing. And, Mikey's in there saying Moore had 32. I think Dylan Cousins was drafted to be a top guy and showed that with 30 goals. Moore is a different story altogether. But
it's also like 4 or 5 years younger than Moore too.
Yeah. Yep. So I think you could get back into that. And, you mentioned not only winning for this year, but playing for the future. It kind of reminds me of another trade in LA that just happened with Luka Doncic. I'm not saying that Cousins is a top 5 player in hockey, but they traded away an older player in their centerman there, Davis, for a younger guy. And so maybe they changed around their dynamic of their team, but they got a guy that potentially is obviously great now and can be great in the future for Luka. So, I think it's a similar adage, yeah, you're getting a younger player still in his prime that could progress. And SP saying it's Tage's year, Luka. You know what I mean? So, yeah, but I don't think Buffalo's getting rid of Tage Thompson. So, I'm just saying it's a similar quota. Yeah. Does Deneau help you get past the first round this season more than Cousins? You can make that argument for the Los Angeles Kings, but does the overall aspect of a Cousins help the Kings in the future? I think you can make that argument as well.
Yeah, it's an off-season move for me. I don't see it happening in season.
All right, guys. I didn't say that Cousins was a generational talent. Back off there in the chat, Jesus Christ.
But yeah, I think if they do go with what they have now, this roster, we are all kind of looking at it saying this team's not going to beat Edmonton in a 7-game series. So, are you cool? Are you cool with that? Is anybody okay with that? I'm not. Are you you're cool with just kind of running out the same centerman next year and let's just try it again? Let's see what else we can do. I'm sure you got the free agent pool that's coming out, but you got to try something different. You got to mix things up a little bit because you can't keep trying out the same thing. And I think this team really is desperately in need of a right shot centerman that you can go out there and be reliable on any given game or any given time in the game. And I don't know if they have that right now.
So this brings up my next question. The secret question that I was going to ask you guys is that, you just brought up my point. Is this team, regardless of who they bring in, is this team a Stanley Cup team? Well, at any time, a team can become a Stanley Cup team if they get hot enough, Kemper and all, yada, yada, yada. But we don't expect that. Will they win Will they win a round? Possibly. I think our most interesting trade piece, which I don't know how much likelihood Rob Blake would do it, but our most interesting trade piece in a package for hockey trade is Vladislav Gavrikov.
Ooh, okay.
And the reason I say that is he plus, plus an asset, getting a valuable player. I don't know what player yet, but is Gavrikov a trade piece for another team? Obviously, having a great year. The Kings could move on from him because he's an older player. Is he in the plans for this team for the next 4, 5, 6 years? Maybe not. Like, could it be a hockey trade with a team maybe that needs a lockdown left shot defenseman? Does he garnish the highest trade value that he possibly could have right now for the trade deadline? Is he a piece that would make maybe maybe you get Gavrikov and a one for Cousins and Bowen Byram and Jordan Spence, like that kind of 3-for-2 type deal. I know, and then or maybe even make a third team come in there. I just think Gavrikov is an interesting trade away piece if they don't think this team can make moves in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of fans were upset that they didn't move Matt Roy last year, and we're kind of in the same situation that we are now. I mean, and you don't really hear that. It's weird. Like, everybody was talking about moving Matt Roy last year and why they didn't trade him. I mean, and nobody's kind of mentioned Gavrikov and potentially moving him, whereas there's only a 1-point difference where the Kings are at this point than where they were last year. So it's not like they're a better team. Maybe they are in terms of like aura and how players are performing and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a definitely interesting topic. I mean, doesn't have any trade protection, so you can just send him wherever. UFA next year. You can certainly find teams that are going to be interested in that type of player, because I'm sure any playoff team would be interested in Gavrikov the season he's having. Personally, for me, I think the Kings are actually going to keep him on the right side when Anderson is healthy. From everything I've heard, it sounds like Hiller's very, very happy with what he's been getting out of that pair of 44 and 84. And that leads me to believe that they're going to end up potentially looking for a left shot defenseman. And what type of caliber that left shot defenseman is, it remains to be seen, but that's kind of where I think they're heading toward.
So Spence, you think what? Spence,
Gavrikov
the
is a
no
good
and a
trade.
one?
Yeah, I could see that.
Joe, entertain my question here, bro. Come on. This is what the tinfoil hat segment is for.
I think it's a fair question. I want to say, I think it's a fair question. I think it was brought up last year as Russo with Matt Roy. I think it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. But when you consider how are the Kings built, what does this team believe in? What does Rob Blake and Jim Hiller believe in, and how you win games? It's defense. Gavrikov ain't going anywhere. Like, that's, and I think he doesn't he have a no movement clause?
Some people in the chat are saying so, but I haven't looked.
Either way,
I'm looking at this website. It says nothing. I'm gonna look at something else though.
Either way, I just don't think this is. I don't want to say it's not on the Kings' radar because he's a UFA, and obviously all that stuff's going to come into play. They're going to probably field phone calls, whatever. But he is the epitome of how they're built. So, if they trade Gavrikov, that in essence is a complete shift in how they plan on playing the rest of the season, and I just don't think that that's where they're going to be. I think they're going to, take it. I think they end up re-signing him.
Yeah, I just looked at Puckpedia. He does have a full no move clause.
Okay, it's full.
So you'd have to waive.
Your scenario, Randon, I love it. But to think that the Kings are going to swap their blue line in that hypothetical trade and move out a Gavrikov and bring in a Bo Byram would be a total shift in philosophy that, as much as I would love it, it's just not the way the Kings operate. So I would be genuinely stunned if they traded Gavrikov just because he is them. Like that's how they play. That's him. So I don't know. I would just be very surprised if they did.
How about this? I had some people ask me this the other day. Marcus Pedersen just re-signed. I believe it was 4 or 5 years, 6 years, 5.5 million.
Yeah.
I could be wrong there, but it was 5.5, and there was some term tied to it. People were asking me how does that affect what Gavrikov's contract's going to be. I don't know if it really does affect it. I was looking at AFP Analytics, who does their contract projections, and they were projecting Gavrikov around the same range in terms of salary, around 5.5, which to me seems like on the lower end. Because I was expecting maybe closer to 7, considering the time and the minutes he's been getting and what he's been getting. So, like when you look at that type of projection, are you guys comfortable with that? Or are you guys willing to give Gavrikov that type of money?
5.5. Then at 6 years, a long time for me. I wouldn't feel comfortable. I couldn't argue against it, honestly, just because I can philosophically and stylistically argue against it, but I can't just from the way that the Kings operate and the way Gavrikov has played. I would say he would have earned it at that point, and it's a heck of a lot better than the 7 by near 7, which I kind of figured he could be in line to get, because I do think his defensive value is going to get incredibly pumped up, in part because, he's been good defensively, in part because he plays in a system that rewards that, and shines light on that. So, I still don't love it, Russ, say the 6 by 5.5. But I would understand it, I guess.
I know what you're saying with how they want to play and stylistically. Do you think Rob Blake cares that he locks in the left side of the defense for 3 more years? Because if you give him a contract, like there's no changing the team.
Yeah,
like
that's your left side.
That's your left side for three seasons.
There's
no flexibility.
That's what I don't like about it.
There's the Joe side of it, and there's the Rob Blake side of it.
Yeah. So the Joe side of it, I don't care for Anderson, Gavrikov, Edmundson for the foreseeable future. I think we run into the same problems over and over and over again, and we're all going to be, man, what's going on? Why can't they win? And it's a big surprise to everybody. So that I don't particularly like. But if I'm pretending to be Rob Blake, that's how I build my roster. It doesn't matter that Joe doesn't like how this roster is built. This is how I build the roster. This is how I, Rob Blake, see this team, and this is how I think it fits best. So we are built on defense and structure. Jim Hiller is built on defense and structure. That's Vladislav Gavrikov. So I think they're willing to pay for that. So I think they're willing to outbid for that, which is why I think it gets him closer to 7, because I think the Kings, a la Joel Edmundson, are willing to pay the extra year and the extra $1 million to get him. So, yeah, like I just think it's a little bit rigid, which it would be less of an issue if they didn't have Edmundson in for the next 3 years after this one at $3.85 million, because it allows you can have your 2 stalwarts in Anderson and Gavrikov on your first 2 pairs, and then it allows you flexibility with the other 4 defensemen, which I think could benefit you. And included in that flexibility is a guy like Mo Verari. See, here's the thing that gets a little misconstrued here. Now, some of y'all on a little bit of a rant, Brandon. But, like, everybody...
That's what the tinfoil hat does, bro.
Like, all Joe likes are these offensive, fast-skating, offensive defensemen that are small. Has anyone pumped Jacob Mo Verari's tires more than us and me on this show? He's not an offensive defenseman. He's not this small, smooth skating defenseman, but he's good at transporting pucks. That's what it comes down to. Like, period. Like, that's what frustrates me the most is you had somebody already better than Joel Edmondson and Jacob Overari, and they wasted so much money, and it locks them in. It just locks them into Anderson, Gavrikov, Edmondson. And again, if
so where even if Rob Blake got fired and the ideology wanted to be changed by the new regime, they couldn't.
What are you doing with it, right? What like honestly, what you would have to go and talk to whoever like Edmondson or whatever and say, listen, I'm a new GM. I'm coming in. I'm going in a different direction. You have a no movement clause. I will honor that. I'm willing to do what I can do to trade you to wherever you want to get traded to, but that exactly though, Randon, that makes it extremely difficult. And so it's like, you're stuck here. And again, like I know Gavrikov, I don't mean this to be like down on Gavrikov. He's had an excellent season. He's done really, really well. I still don't, I think that there's like, I like Marcus Pettersson as a better defenseman in my opinion than Gavrikov. I think he does much more in transition, much more both on all three zones than Gavrikov. A fit like that would have been great, but I get it. He's gone. I just stylistically for me, right? That's what it comes down to. And I think if you're so rigid with Anderson, Gavrikov, Edmondson, I worry. Like I worry we're stuck in the same spot for a while.
I think Mikey Money in the chat is spot on with what he's saying. Whatever you guys are thinking, the Kings will do the opposite. That's pretty much what's been going on the last 3 years. So you're spot on there, Mikey Money.
So they are giving up a first for a rental. So let's get into those players.
And I want to clarify, I think, because I mentioned Theodore earlier. He's actually not a UFA. I think he just re-signed. I was looking at it.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
October.
So he's not a UFA. Because I was bringing up
Did I miss that?
I was bringing up the UFAs on the left side for defense. Good Lord. It's slim pickings. Gavrikov is probably, Chikrin's there. I don't see the Capitals letting him walk. I just
agreed.
A ton of money with how well he's been playing there. They've been playing him at forward on the power play, by the way, which is God.
Outside the box.
Why can't we have that type of play style? And of course, PLD's playing well over there. Matt Roy's doing his thing, so I might just give him a Caps fan. But after Chikrin, it's Matt Grzelcyk, Ivan Provorov, Orlov, Gavrikov, Lindgren, Ian Cole. It's really nothing. And the thing that's it's tough because we love Gavrikov's game and what he's brought to this team, but you already have two other Gavrikovs now on this roster that you don't really need. He's better, I would say, than probably Joel Edmondson. Maybe on the same tier of Mikey Anderson.
Yeah, that's not. Don't put Edmondson in that. Okay, thank you. Don't put Edmondson in that tier.
Yeah, it's like we need a little dynamic playmaking on that left side because it's a little bare right now.
Yeah, and that's it, Russ. Like if. And this is why, when Mikey in the chat that's why I said, okay, if Joe was doing it, it'd be this. But if I'm Rob Blake, then Gavrikov's an easy re-sign. Now, this would be, and even for Joe, this would be a way easier re-sign if we didn't have Joel Edmondson anchoring the bottom pair. Because then you have that spot, you can play around with, you can be flexible, you can take your shot at somebody a little bit more progressive, a little bit more creative, a little bit more modern, if you will. But you still got your rock solid D-men in Anderson and Gavrikov for your top two pairs. So I think that's what, but when you have Edmondson locked in there, again, that just makes it so much worse. Now, I guess if you look at it the other way, Randon, who knows if as we go into next season, say Gavrikov resigns, is it going to be Anderson Gavrikov again? Right? Will they do that? Keep Gavrikov on that right on that right side, and then they're gonna poor Clark is gonna be with Edmondson, and then do you find a left shot, a more capable, more, as much as I like Mo Ferrari, the Kings don't like him as much as we do. So do they find a more in a trade, left shot defenseman to play with maybe Brant or Drew Doughty? I don't know. I mean, this is a problem. All that we're talking about here is we're trying to find different fits because there's one block that is just it's an albatross of a contract that doesn't need to be there. And it's taking up not even so much cap space, especially as the cap goes up. It's taking up a roster spot. It's taking up years. It's taking up roster flexibility. It's taking up play style flexibility. And it is just utterly unnecessary. And that's what makes it so frustrating because we're talking about it, with relation to a Gavrikov resign.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just something that I brought up. That's like you're pigeonholing yourself into this team, and maybe if there is a new regime, like he won't be re-signed until the end of the season. But we'll see how that kind of goes. I want to get into some names and something that's been thrown around from a standpoint, of on Twitter, and he's on one of the tops for the Athletic. Holden mentioned it earlier. As I keep seeing Jake Evans mentioned as a Kings trade target. I like him, but he's on expiring contract, and we said we wouldn't be willing to trade a first. He's number 27 overall in the Athletic as far as their big board, and how their big board is ranked is how much buzz is around that player's name, how much would he be, how the likelihood of him being moved, and then the impact to the next team. So Jake Evans, his AAV is 1.7 million, so well within the amount. His market value, according to Athletics model, is 2.5 million. He's a quality fourth line option, and he's blowing past all his career highs, and he's of 13 goals and 29 points. Canadians not really in the hunt. What do you guys think of Jake Evans as a right shot for this team?
Is not the exciting name that I'm sure a lot of Kings fans will be happy with. I would hope if that's like the only piece that Rob Blake goes after, I don't know if that really changes my outlook of this team in the playoffs. It's funny because I was sharing this with Joe last night. Like, I was drinking at the Super Bowl party, and I ended up staying up super late, just kind of perusing different names on trades and whatnot. And I came across Jake Evans because he had that quote. I don't know if you saw it, Brandon, after the game yesterday, where he was pretty much talking like in past tense. Like, it was like, hey, I've had a great run here. It's been a lot of fun. I will always be appreciative of my time in Montreal. So it sounds like he's pretty much like gone. Like, he's already been traded.
Like trade me. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he already knows a trade's going down. And there can be moves during the Four Nations, which I at first thought that it was a roster freeze. Like, nobody's being moved. No, they can have trades go down during this little break here. So we might see some movement happen. But so I was kind of looking and kind of going like, could this be a Kings fit? Because I know someone shared that Marc Bergevin was at a Montreal game just a couple days ago. So there's that. Who is he scouting? Obviously, he knows a lot of players that are there because he was the GM for those players. And then you kind of look at what would like Jake Evans bring to this Kings team. Well, he's a right shot centerman. The Kings' only other real right shot centerman is Trevor Lewis. Not really the best player to have that we've seen at times the last few games. So there's that. So he would be an upgrade there. He would also be an upgrade in the faceoff circle, which Kings, like I said, their only right shot center is Trevor Lewis. You can't really rely on him. I believe he's at like 50.9% on the year in the dot, whereas Jake Evans is like 52+% in the dot. So there's that added benefit. Not that it's like the end all be all, but then you have a little bit added production, 27 points in the year, only one less point than Deneau, Warren Fogle, albeit in like more games. So there's a little bit there. So yeah, I think if you can get a player like Jake Evans, who I think could be like a player who maybe elevates his game a little bit more, playing away from players like Yoel Armia, who he's been playing with a lot more. I think that could be a fun, not like a fun piece, but a decent upgrade for this team who probably needs an upgrade on the fourth line. Oh, and he was line mates. He played on the same line with Phil Deneau during the Canadian Stanley Cup run in the playoffs. So there's that. So he's familiar. He's got familiarity with teammates like Deneau and Joel Edmondson too. So I think there's a real chance that we see Evans wearing a Kings uniform here soon.
Yeah, I think Evans would upgrade the fourth line. I buy there. I think I'd be cautious buying into the production because I'm not sure how believable it is. Prior to January 1st, he had 6 goals at 5-on-5 with like a 25% shooting percentage. And he's now down at like a 6.5% shooting percentage, which is a lot closer to where he'll actually settle. And he's got 1 goal at 5-on-5. That said, that's why I just say I'm cautious because I worry that some of that early production could drive the cost up. Elliot Friedman's reported that Montreal is looking for a 2nd-round pick. The Kings already traded that for Tanner Jeannot in the offseason. So the Kings don't have a 2nd-round pick to deal with unless they deal. Do they have next year's 2nd, Russ?
I think they do.
To play with.
Should.
I think they do.
They do, yeah.
Like if Montreal's interested in a 26 second, a 26 second, that perhaps could do it. Again, do I want to trade a 2nd-round pick? I don't believe in 2nd-round picks for fourth-line players. I was dead set against it with Tanner Jeannot. I would not want to pay that for Jake Evans. I do think that said, like I get it. I think he's an upgrade, right? I think that the Kings are going to be looking to upgrade on that, like Hellenius, Lee, Thomas, like trio, because the fourth line has Jeannot and Lewis aren't going anywhere.
It's a hole. It's a black hole right
now.
now.
Yeah, so they're looking for an area to upgrade, and Jake Evans would upgrade that. I would not deny that. But I guess my question is the upgrade from Hellenius A, worth the 2nd, and B, does it actually move the needle? Does it really move the needle? And that's where I come out, not really. So, I don't know. Yeah, Holden 92 says a 3rd-round pick for Evans wouldn't be bad. No, it wouldn't. But if Montreal says they want a 2nd, they've held firm in the past on an asking price. So we'll see what they decide to do here. But I just don't. I'm not in the market for trading a 2nd for fourth-line players, particularly when who should trade a 2nd for a fourth-line player? The Edmonton Oilers should trade a 2nd. Like Vegas, Carolina, like these teams that are actual cup contenders, those are the teams that should be trading their 2nd-round picks and their high picks for even if it's depth players, because they might legitimately be one depth piece away from getting them over the top. That's just not LA, and I don't think it's a wise move.
The next guy I want to get into is number 2 on the big board here. This might have to be a sign and trade or trade and sign. But Rickard Rakell from the Penguins, 31 years old, AAV of $5 million. So they could figure out a way to fit it in this year because we're at 4.8. So you wouldn't need that much money going back the other way to make it work. But he's on his way to topping 30 goals again this season. He's been a productive offensive player. He's a right shot winger, 31. So maybe you sign a 3 to 4 year deal with him. I don't know if that makes sense for that, but then that theoretically moves Turcotte to 4th-line center at that point, because then you could find maybe Rakell plays wing on the first line, or you move some things around to where he's a winger. Number 2 on the overall list. Is he a player that you guys are interested in for this team, not only this year, but in the future? Does he move the needle enough for this roster? And do you think that it would have to be a first? So it would break your rule of a first for a UFA. Obviously, I said it could be a sign and trade, but what are your opinions on Rakell?
I like Rakell. I like the player. I'm probably a no here, to be honest with you. I was just bringing up some of his numbers, and great, 25 goals, I believe, 5-on-5. So or I could be wrong actually, but I believe he's shooting 16% on the year. He hasn't shot anything higher, I believe 12. So got a little bit elevated shooting luck going on there. I think the reason I'm probably no is because the cost. Like you said, Brandon, you're probably looking at maybe a first-round pick for that type of player, given the way that we talked about how first-round picks are being looked at this year, how the quality is maybe not as high. You do still have a few years left on that deal, so there is that. But I don't know. I've never really been a huge fan of Raquel.
Well, that's right. His contract is 2028. I thought I saw UFA.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah, he's still got a few years left. I think 3 years left at $5 million. So there's some term there, but I don't know. That's going to be an expensive piece. I think it's going to be first round pick and some. So you're probably looking at a decent prospect that you'd have to probably get rid of as well. That scares me a little bit for that age and that type of player.
I've actually always kind of liked Raquel back to his early Ducks days. I think there's a fit. I think that makes sense that there's a reason for a fit. I don't know if the cost makes sense for LA. Like I'm reading, Josh Yeo in The Athletic had talked about this. He covers the Penguins, because they're not exactly necessarily, they don't need to move him. As Russ said, he's under contract for a couple of years. So they don't need to do it right now. And Josh Yeo writes, it's if a team offers a package of a first round pick and a blue chip prospect, then the Penguins will listen.
Ugh.
Now,
are you willing to trade a green tree and a first rounder for him? Yeah, I'm a no on that.
If that's the price, I'm a no, because similar to what I just said before, although he's not a rental, I don't know that he moves the needle enough to do that.
Yeah, what's considered a blue chip prospect for them? I mean,
for LA, that's the other part, Brandon. LA's blue chip is green tree, but I don't know if Pittsburgh considers them blue chip, or who knows. What they're.
And that's the thing. That's the Kings blue chip. That is the Kings blue chip.
That is the Kings blue chip. Correct.
Carter George, maybe, depending on how teams view
Carter
goalies,
George,
maybe.
Yeah.
But
Depends on the team.
Yeah, I don't.
Would you do Carter George in a one?
No, I'm not trading. That's the thing. Is like I'm not trading any of the Kings' top maybe like 3 or 4 prospects right now. I don't know. I think you're kind of
Green Tree is in the same stratosphere for me as far as untouchables as Clark, or a similar stratosphere. Just the way he's vaulted up the boards, I think he's Craig Button's top 10 overall prospect. And so, you could convince me for a 1 in Carter George, like hashtag goalies. Like, what is he going to be in the future? Like, you could convince me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, especially for a team probably who's desperate and need for scoring like the Kings are. But I mean, we've talked like Joe has said, like this team has scorers. They have pretty decent scoring wingers. Just defensively, they're a little hamstrung a little bit. So, and to be honest with you, Liam Greentree is not untouchable for me. Like if you find a good young player who's got some term that you can maybe package Greentree for, then yeah, let's do it. But I'm not doing it for a 31-year-old winger who's got 3 years left.
I want to leave you with this, as I suspect we'll probably get ready to wrap up here in a bit. Maybe this is for a future episode. Because the Kings, we're talking about the limited assets, right? And Brant Clark's untouchable, Quentin Byfield. We don't want to trade Greentree if we can avoid it. We don't have many prospects. So first, we've talked about Jordan Spence being a guy that could be dealt, a valuable player. Is there an appetite? Like, what is Alex Turcotte? Is he a player? Has he recouped some of that young player prospect value now that he's put together a nice little season here? And he has. And this isn't me saying that I want to trade him necessarily, but if at the end of the day, where does Alex Turcotte settle? Is he truly a first line player? with first line production, mind you, or is he more of that just solid? He's an NHLer. He's going to give you. He probably wears a letter one day, but he's a third line type of player. There's nothing wrong with that, to be very clear. But from what the Kings are looking for in terms of their needs, is he somebody either at this deadline in the offseason? He's on an attractive deal. I totally get that. I'm just because their assets are what they are. He's much closer, clearly, because he's showing he can produce at the end. I shouldn't say produce at the NHL level, but he's playing good hockey at the NHL level, and he's been a pretty impactful player, and I like him. But is he somebody that the Kings consider in a deal?
Like this together.
It almost reminds me of like Gabe Vilardi, who couldn't stay healthy, finally put together a decent season, and he was the piece, the key piece in a deal for Pierre-Luc Dubois. Is there a similar-ish deal where what is Alex Turcotte? Because there were some questions like, what is Gabe Vilardi? He has never been healthy, and all of a sudden his breakout year was this 45-point year or whatever it was, and that's where we're looking at the same type of thing with Turcotte. Now, obviously, Vilardi's turned into a hell of a player. What does the future look like for Turcotte, and what are the Kings' view for Turcotte as they go down? I wonder that as we talk about all this trade stuff and the assets, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't know what they actually think about Turcotte. And again, I'm a Turcotte fan, but just throwing his name out there out of curiosity as much as anything, of like, you're looking for a big piece to acquire, you got to give to get. Right? I mean, you got to give to get. If you want to get somebody like a Tuck or like a, Tuck, that could make some sense in a way too. If you're looking for somebody like that, hey, I don't know, just throwing it out there out of curiosity.
The thing is like his contract is like probably one of the best values on the team. So, like, and the thing is like, I don't know if we've seen Turcotte's potential. Maybe, I don't think we have yet.
That's fair.
Who knows what his potential is going to be? I feel like he's probably the player who's maybe got the biggest range in terms of ceiling and floor on the team in terms of the young players. Like, we don't know what his ceiling is going to be. We don't even really know what his floor is going to be because we haven't really seen him in the NHL too long. So I don't know. I mean, like, I'd be interested, just given, like, I've always thought Turcotte has looked better down the middle. And if you already have a middle solidified with Quentin Byfield there, you have Philip Deneau for a couple more years. Turcotte maybe was going to take the reins eventually, but I just go back to the Dylan Cousins conversation where I'd much rather have a player like that, to be honest with you.
That's where I'm kind of going with that.
Like if you're packaging, if you're putting a package together with Turcotte for Cousins, like, give me that. Because we, like I said, we haven't seen what Turcotte's ceiling could be, but I know Dylan Cousins can score 30 in the NHL. I've seen it already. So give me that potential over whatever potential that Alex Turcotte can bring. And I agree with you. I love Alex Turcotte. I think he's been a great player. He's been a great story for this team, but got to give to get.
It's been coming more and more apparent to me that I kind of want this team to stand pat because I don't trust Rob Blake in the organization.
It's getting there, huh?
That's very fair, Brandon. That is very fair.
Because it's like, if you trust this organization, Raquel should be a no-brainer, right? Because you feel like they could build off that move and bring in that piece to go to the next level. It's kind of where we're at there. For me, it's where I'm at. It's like I almost don't trust this organization to make the right move. So maybe the right move is making no move, and let the chips fall where they may and adjust in the offseason.
And then Vegas is going to trade for Ricard Raquel. It happens.
Well,
every year.
Appreciate you guys. And coming in here tonight, the fans there. Please hit that like button on the way out. All of our articles are popping off there at hockeyroyalty.com. So jump over there and get some good reading in. Follow us there on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. Our dashes or our handles will be going across the bottom. The main one is at hockey_royalty. We still got t-shirts available, so hit up Hockey Royalty for t-shirts. Maybe we'll start giving some of those away because we're itching inching closer to our 200th episode as a podcast. So maybe we'll throw some t-shirts at you guys for those episodes. Enjoy the Four Nations tournament. Plenty more tinfoil hat segments coming up when the trade deadline gets closer. And I believe we haven't talked about it, so I don't know if it's 100% going true, but I know my boys like to have that trade deadline day live feed going on. So that's a high possibility for you guys as well. So hit that like button on the way out.
Who's your pick on the Four Nations? Who do you got?
USA. I think USA's sweeping the World Juniors and the Nations tournament.
I like it. How about you, Joe?
Canada.
Okay. I'm gonna go Sweden. Okay, we'll be a little different here.
I like it.
I love that blue line. I love it.
All right. And then as this podcast, as always, go Kings go.